Hi, welcome back. This is the guide talking about image views. These assets, they help us show images are basically digital photographs or icons in different parts of our applications. So let's get this started. I'm going to have to Andrew in the studio and start a new application activity. I'm going to call it Images app. And then the moment that our application loads up, I want to actually add some images to it. So I have some images in here. I've actually added two images that are basically images of Vancouver where I live. Something you want to keep in mind is that in this method, which is basically adding images statically to our Android, to the applications, you want to avoid using images that are very, very large. So try not to go above anything that is like 1500 pixels because otherwise we have to apply some image factor into it that resize us the images. So that's something that we can see in the future lessons. But for now, let's go with images that are kind of smaller, about, 1500 pixels, a regular sized image. Would you just avoid very large images? So what you want to do is you actually want to add these images to your application. So in here, I'm going to go to our resources folder as a folder in the folder. I'm going to go to Draw Well, and I'm going to drag these two images to my drawable. And then here I'm going to say, yes, do everything that you're supposed to be doing. And as those two images to my Android Studio, now we have to see how we're going to use these images. One of them is called the one building. The other one is called Vancouver image. Something to keep in mind is this. There must be lowercase letters. You absolutely cannot add images that they don't have a lowercase or they have uppercase letters in them. Basically, anything that you add in the rest folder, there must be law cases. That's why you have C on this call launcher, _background. All of them are lowercase letters in the values. You have the same thing in the box on the layouts. So that's something you absolutely want to keep in mind. So let's go ahead into my layout, and in my layout, I'm going to go ahead, get rid of that. I'm actually going to go ahead and add an image of you. And the moment you add an image, it says of each of the images you want to add, I'm going to say, I want to give it the van building. So I'm going to go ahead and apply that. And in here, that image, let's go ahead and resize this guy a little bit more, resize it and place it in here. Now, there are a few things we could change about it. Primarily, the thing that I want to actually change about it is something called scale type, which is a very important, a very useful thing to change. So scale type is basically how does your image actually show inside your image of you? How does it resize itself to show it to you? I'm going to go ahead and say give me something called a fit center, which is the default mode, which is going to try to fit your object or your image without making any changes to its proportions. How about we try something called if I'm not drawing, I'm going to try center inside, which actually does a similar thing, the one that I actually wanted these fits and not, so that was the one I tried. Center. So what it does is basically it resize your image in a way that it fits the entirety of your image of view without changing the proportions of your image. You could, for instance, go ahead and say, give me a fit XY, which is going to try to squeeze your image inside your image view. But that's just usually not what we want, because you want to make sure the image doesn't get stretched out or squeezed out. What we want to do is we want to make sure that we keep the proportions of it. Again, this really depends on what you are trying to do. I kind of like center for this example. So in this one, if my image was very wide, it would become like this. If it was very tall, it would become like that. And that's something, it's going to work for this purpose, not whether I want to do. Next year, I'm actually going to go ahead and say, let's fit this object horizontally and vertically. So it is there, and then the last thing is we remember what is it called, is called an image of you. This is my image of you. So that's the name of my image of, this is all good and bad, but only works when you are in the layout editor. What if you want to change the image using the code in here? So to do that, I'm actually going to go ahead to my main activity. And in here in the uncreate, I'm going to go ahead and say my image of you got set on click listener, So whenever I click on my image of view, what do I want to happen when I actually change the image in my image of view? So I'm going to say my image of view that said image resource. Now, the image that they already did use is called the brand building. So I want to use the other one. So I want to say, get me the resources.tribal.vancouver image. So, my image of view said image resource and then the name of the image that I want to use, and that's as simple as it gets. Just go ahead and run this application and let's see it in my emulator. And here I have that image, and when I click on it, it changes to the other image, which is exactly what I expected to see. So quick recap of everything that we did in here. We had an image of view, the other images into the drawable folder. And we said to one of them using the layout editor and the other one, we used it programmatically using set unclick listener. Whenever we click on that image, it changes itself to show the other image. And that's all we have to do here. And let's see, let's move on to our next lesson.